Chapter 1. The first breath of the mist. The sterile white ceiling of the hospital was gone, replaced by a suffocating, churning blanket of charcoal gray fog that seemed to swallow light itself. Kieran blinked against the damp, heavy air, his senses screaming in confusion as he instinctively braced for the familiar, agonizing ache in his left leg. He hesitated, drawing a ragged breath, and then slowly shifted his weight onto the limb that had been shattered for months. He stood up effortlessly, his eyes widening in sheer disbelief as the crippling injury that had confined him to a hospital bed vanished without leaving even a trace of scar tissue. Before he could scream into the void or celebrate his sudden miraculous healing, a chilling, synthetic mechanical voice vibrated directly inside his skull, shattering the eerie silence of the desolate wilderness. Welcome to the Mist World. Say goodbye to your comfort zone. Say goodbye to the old world. Keep in mind, this is not a game. This is a deadly game where survival is everything. Your cabin is your only foundation, upgrade it and protect it faithfully. Nighttime is terrifying, and always remember, people are scarier than ghosts. Kieran looked around frantically, his breath catching in his throat as the vast, unnatural fog pressed against him from all sides. Behind him sat a basic, drafty log cabin constructed from rotting pine planks, its door hanging loosely on rusted hinges. On his wrist, a heavy, metallic survival bracelet flashed to life, projecting a glowing holographic digital interface into the gloom. In an instant, billions of humans from across Earth had been dropped simultaneously into this brutal, gamified wasteland. As night approached and the ambient temperature began to plummet rapidly, the global chat interface on Kieran's bracelet overflowed with absolute panic, a chaotic torrent of messages from millions who were freezing, begging for scraps, and weeping in the pitch blackness. But Kieran wasn't panicking. His agonizing months in the isolation of the hospital had taught him absolute patience, and his mind immediately began analyzing the UI, discovering a hidden, unique talent called the Infinite Upgrade System that would allow him to dominate. Chapter 2. Into the Grey Void. While other terrified survivors huddled inside their drafty shacks, weeping into the global chat, Kieran tightened his grip on his resolve and stepped directly into the churning grey void. He kept his movements slow and hyper-calculated, staying strictly within his designated 500-meter rookie protection zone where the system promised beast spawn rates remained exceptionally low. The oppressive silence of the fog was broken only by the crunch of dry twigs beneath his bare feet as he scanned the terrain for usable resources. His meticulous caution paid off when, hidden deep beneath a thorny canopy of mutated, purple-veined brambles, he stumbled upon a softly glowing bronze resource box. Opening it with a wave of his survival bracelet, he found a high-efficiency steel saw that pulsed with a faint green light and a large, heavy creature egg covered in shimmering gold veins. To any starving, short-sighted survivor, a giant egg was just a temporary meal to quiet an empty stomach, but to Kieran, it represented a long-term investment in raw power. Ignoring the persistent, gnawing hunger in his gut, he immediately put the supernatural steel saw to work against a nearby cluster of dense pine trees. The tool hummed with an unnatural, terrifying sharpness, shearing through thick trunks like paper and allowing him to clear an inventory wood timber at an impossible pace. In this harsh mist world, basic raw resources were the true universal currency, and Kieran quickly realized exactly how to manipulate the global market to his advantage. Browsing the chaotic trading interface, his eyes locked onto a desperate survivor who had spawned on an isolated tropical island, surrounded by an endless supply of coconuts and fresh water but completely lacking timber to build a fire or block the freezing midnight dampness. Recognizing a fierce seller's market, Kieran struck swiftly, trading his rapidly harvested wood for premium coconuts and vital stone resources, establishing a highly profitable trade loop. Chapter 3. The Birth of a Sky King. Returning to his rotting pine cabin with a full inventory of stone and exotic coconuts, Kieran carefully placed the heavy, gold-veined creature egg near the center of the room. Almost immediately, the shimmering veins on the shell began to pulse with a warm, radiant light, and fine hairline cracks spread across its smooth surface. With a sharp, metallic snap, the shell fractured completely, and out stepped a magnificent, fledgling hawk with sharp, piercing crimson eyes and feathers that gleamed like polished brass. The system interface before his eyes flared with brilliant gold text, confirming the hatching of a golden feather skyhawk descendant that carried a rumored divine bloodline from the old world. Kieran smiled, a deep sense of companionship washing over him in this lonely wasteland, and named the regal bird Arjun. He knew he was no longer just a desperate, disabled man hiding inside a drafty shack. He was now a certified beast tamer, guarded by a creature destined to rule the skies. Outside, the fog seemed to deepen, swirling against the windowless cabin as if testing its structural integrity, but Kieran ignored the ominous sounds and focused entirely on his glowing holographic UI. He began feeding his newly acquired stone and wood into the upgrade system interface, watching as the spectral outlines of architectural blueprints danced across the dirt floor. The system hummed, demanding an immense amount of materials to fortify the primitive structure before the first true nocturnal cycle began in earnest. Arjun let out a sharp, resonant cry that seemed to echo with latent acoustic energy, settling onto Kiran's shoulder as a loyal sentinel. Kiran felt a surge of profound confidence, knowing that while the rest of humanity was begging for salvation, he was actively constructing a fortress that would serve as the foundation for his eventual rise to total dominance. Chapter 4, The Whispering Wilderness. The first night in the Mist World was a psychological horror story told in shifting shadows and distant, blood-curdling shrieks that echoed through the global chat interface. Kiran sat in the center of his cabin, cracked coconuts providing him with vital hydration and sustenance, while Arjun kept his crimson eyes locked on the gaps between the wooden wall planks. Through the narrow slits, the fog outside seemed to morph into phantom shapes, whispering foul, indistinct words that tried to entice Kiran to open his door. The global chat was a graveyard of text. Notifications flashed constantly as thousands of foolish survivors succumbed to the psychological pressure, opening their shelters only to have their lifelines instantly severed by unseen horrors. Kiran remained completely unmoved, his mind analyzing the complex mechanics of the survival bracelets marketplace, noting how the prices of basic iron, stone, and fiber fluctuated wildly. He spent the dark hours buying up cheap iron ore from panicked individuals who valued immediate food over long-term structural integrity, utilizing his surplus coconuts as a high-value trading chip. By the time the faint, sickly gray dawn broke through the eastern fog, Kiran had accumulated enough refined metal and stone to begin the primary evolution of his shelter. Arjun stretched his brass-colored wings, letting out a triumphal screech that shattered the lingering nocturnal gloom and signaled the start of a new day of expansion. Kiran stepped outside into the damp morning air, noting that the perimeter of his rookie protection zone felt slightly thinner, a subtle hint from the system that time was a luxury he could not afford to waste. He looked toward the uncharted wilderness beyond the 500-meter mark, knowing that the truly valuable resource nodes and high-tier blueprint chests lay hidden deep within the treacherous, unmapped territories of the mist. Chapter 5, Expanding the Perimeter. With Arjun soaring high above the canopy as a living radar, Kiran pushed past the boundaries of his initial safe zone, his steel saw held tightly in his right hand. The forest here was denser, the trees twisted into bizarre, unnatural geometry by centuries of exposure to the magical, corrupted mist that defined this world. Arjun's sharp cries from the sky warned Kiran of minor threats ahead, allowing him to easily avoid wandering packs of level 1 mist wolves that were currently terrorizing other nearby survivors. Instead, Kiran focused entirely on harvesting high-density ironwood and rare iron vein stones that were scattered along a dried riverbed he discovered. His infinite upgrade system allowed him to instantly process these materials into refined building blocks, bypassing the hours of smelting and masonry work that the standard system forced upon ordinary players. As he worked, he discovered a hidden iron resource chest guarded by a massive, venomous mist viper that hissed violently, its fangs dripping with corrosive green acid. Before the creature could strike, Arjun descended like a bolt of brass lightning, his razor-sharp talons ripping through the viper's scales and pinning it instantly to the rocky earth. Kiran moved in quickly, finishing the beast with a heavy stone fragment and harvesting its venom sacs, skin, and meat for the system's crafting database. The iron chest contained a rare blueprint for a heavy-duty stone forge and 50 units of refined bronze plating, a massive jackpot for his structural development plans. He returned to his base loaded with advanced materials, ready to initiate a massive overhaul of his cabin before the system's hinted Day 3 calamity arrived to test humanity. Chapter 6, Prepping for the Storm. The global chat on Day 2 was no longer just filled with panic, it had transformed into a grim marketplace of desperation as a red system warning began flashing across everyone's screens. Calamity warning, a sub-zero cold wave will impact the mist world in 24 hours, prepare your shelters or face absolute eradication. Kiran watched as the prices of wood and charcoal skyrocketed to absurd heights, with desperate people offering rare blueprints and advanced weapons just for a few bundles of dry kindling. Refusing to succumb to the market frenzy, Kiran used his unique forge blueprint to construct a heavy-duty stone hearth right in the center of his cabin, integrating it directly into his upgrade queue. He then initiated the first major evolution of his shelter, feeding all his accumulated refined stone, ironwood, and bronze plating into the system interface. A brilliant, blinding flash of blue light enveloped the rotting pine shack, and the sound of grinding stone and shifting metal echoed through the clearing for several minutes. When the light finally faded, the primitive cabin had been completely replaced by a reinforced, dual-layered bronze hall with thick stone foundations and heavy iron-reinforced doors. The structure was completely draft-proof, its reinforced walls boasting a high insulation rating that would easily withstand the oncoming Arctic onslaught. Arjun nested comfortably on a custom bronze perch near the ceiling, his golden feathers reflecting the warm glow of the newly ignited stone hearth. Kiran stood in the center of his secure, reinforced fortress, feeling a profound sense of absolute security while the rest of humanity frantically scoured the wilderness for scraps of kindling. Chapter 7, The Cryogenic Onslaught. The dawn of Day 3 did not bring light, but rather a terrifying, howling gale that carried with it a wall of unnatural, sub-zero frost that turned the fog into shards of ice. The system interface on Kiran's wrist flashed violently as the ambient temperature plummeted to -40 degrees within a matter of minutes, triggering instant death notices across the global chat. Hundreds of survivors who had failed to fortify their wooden shacks froze to death in their sleep, their frantic, final pleas for warmth vanishing into the digital ether. Inside Kiran's dual-layered bronze hall, however, the massive stone fireplace crackled loudly, throwing off an intense, radiant heat that kept the interior at a comfortable, warm temperature. Kiran sat calmly by the fire, drinking warm coconut water and systematically exploiting the catastrophic global crisis to rapidly expand his wealth. He began manufacturing basic, long-burning torches using his surplus wood and the flammable fats he had extracted from the mist vipers he hunted earlier. He posted these torches on the global market at premium rates, demanding only rare blueprints, iron ore, and advanced creature taming scrolls in exchange for immediate survival. Panicked survivors readily stripped themselves of their most valuable long-term assets just to secure a single torch that could keep them alive for another hour. Through this ruthless but necessary economic exploitation, Kiran accumulated a massive hoard of high-tier resources without ever stepping foot outside into the freezing storm. Arjun preened his brass feathers by the fire, completely unaffected by the apocalyptic blizzard raging outside, while Kiran's inventory overflowed with the foundational materials of a true empire. Chapter 8, The Taming of the Titans. Among the mountain of rare items Kiran acquired during the cold wave was a pristine, glowing green scroll titled Ancient Wilderness Taming Pact. As the howling blizzard outside began to slowly lose its intensity on Day 4, Kiran decided it was time to expand his tactical ground forces to complement Arjun's aerial dominance. He stepped outside into the knee-deep, crystalline snow, his reinforced bronze boots crunching heavily as he followed a faint energy signature highlighted by his survival bracelet. Deep within a snow-covered ravine at the edge of his expanded territory, he discovered a den containing two massive, injured mutant creatures known as Terra claw bears. These beasts were magnificent horrors, their fur covered in natural bone armor plating and their front paws ending in 5 razor-sharp, titanium-like claws capable of tearing through solid stone. The creatures were weak from the intense cold and starving, their growls low and desperate as Kiran approached them with bowls of warm, nutrient-rich viper meat mixed with holy spring water. Using the taming scroll, he channeled his spiritual intent through the survival bracelet, wrapping the giant bears in a soothing, emerald green light that instantly healed their frostbitten wounds. The Terra claw bears blinked their massive, golden eyes, their hostility melting away as the system confirmed a successful taming bond, registering them as loyal protectors. Kiran named the larger, broader male bear Bhima and the sleeker, faster female bear Nakula, welcoming them into his rapidly growing army. With Arjun patrolling the skies and the twin titan bears guarding the ground, Kiran's military might have officially reached a level that no ordinary survivor could hope to match. Chapter 9, The Leaderboard Revelation. With the passing of the devastating cold wave, a booming global announcement from the system echoed across the entire mist world, signaling the formal end of the newbie stage. Attention survivors, the introductory phase is complete. Global structural and combat ratings have been calculated based on shelter integrity, resource accumulation, and military force. A massive, glowing holographic leaderboard materialized in the sky above the forest, visible to every living soul across the world, listing the top survivors. Kiran scrolled through his survival bracelet's interface and felt a grim smile spread across his face as his name flashed brightly within the top 10,000 contestants globally. His rapid economic exploitation and relentless upgrading had earned him the highly coveted, legendary 3S grade evaluation rating from the system. The completion rewards for achieving such a high rank were absolutely mind-blowing, materializing directly into his inventory in a shower of radiant purple and gold light. He received a legendary Fortress Evolution Scroll, a permanent passive buff to resource processing speed, and a rare blueprint for an automated ballista defense system. Without wasting a single second, Kiran activated the Fortress Evolution Scroll, target feeding his entire accumulated hoard of refined iron, stone blocks, and bronze plating into his existing structure. The ground trembled violently as the bronze hull began to actively expand outward and upward, absorbing the surrounding earth to form deep, reinforced defensive trenches. Within hours, his home had evolved into a massive, multi-tiered bronze villa, flanked by 4 automated ballista towers that clicked and rotated with lethal, mechanized precision. Chapter 10, Mapping the receded fog. Following the conclusion of the newbie stage, the suffocating, dense fog rolled back by several kilometers, revealing entirely new, uncharted terrains that had previously been completely inaccessible. Kiran stood on the highest balcony of his newly formed bronze villa, looking out over a vast landscape of ancient pine forests, treacherous dark lakes, and crumbling stone ruins. Arjun soared high into the newly cleared upper atmosphere, his sharp eyes mapping the geography and transmitting the data directly to Kiran's survival bracelet map interface. Hi there! Click the Generate button below to listen to this short example generated by our AI text-to-speech engine. The map revealed several high-density resource nodes, including a sulfur vein to the west and a rare iron forge ruin located deep within a valley to the south. However, the receding fog also revealed that Kiran was no longer entirely alone in his immediate geographical sector. Several smaller, primitive wooden shacks were visible in the distance. The global chat was now buzzing with talk of regional factions, as survivors realized that proximity meant they would either have to cooperate or kill each other for dwindling resources. Kiran knew that peace was a fragile illusion in a world governed by a ruthless survival system, and he immediately ordered Bhima and Nakula to patrol the perimeter of his villa. He began producing thousands of iron-tipped bolts for his automated ballista fortresses, determined to ensure that anyone approaching his territory would face an instant wall of overwhelming lethality. He needed to secure the surrounding resource nodes before any neighboring factions could organize a claim, and he prepared to lead an expeditionary force into the newly opened wildlands. Chapter 11, The Meeting with Mira. On the afternoon of Day 5, while exploring a crumbling stone ruin 3 kilometers south of his villa, Kiran's survival bracelet picked up a strange, fluctuating energy signature. He signaled for Bhima and Nakula to halt in the shadows of a massive pine tree while Arjun circled silently above, his eyes locked on a clearing ahead. In the center of the ruins, a lone female survivor was expertly fending off a pack of level 3 mist panthers using a glowing, elemental spear that crackled with blue lightning. She moved with fluid, lethal grace, her movements completely devoid of the panic that characterized the ordinary, weak survivors Kiran had seen in the global chat. Intrigued by her combat prowess, Kiran stepped out from the foliage, his twin Terra clawbears tracking his movements like silent, heavily armored tanks. The woman spun around instantly, her lightning-imbued spear leveled directly at Kiran's throat, her eyes cold and burning with a fierce, independent survival instinct. "State your name and intention," she demanded, her voice steady despite being stared down by 2 massive, low-growling titan bears. Kiran raised his hands slowly, a calm smile on his face as he introduced himself, diffusing the immediate tension by offering her a flask of pure holy spring water. She hesitated, then lowered her weapon slightly, introducing herself as Mira, a solo survivor who had managed to acquire a rare blueprint for a weapon-enchanting spirit house. Recognizing the immense value of her unique craftsmanship, Kiran immediately realized that a tactical alliance with Mira would propel his military capabilities into an entirely new stratosphere. Chapter 12, The Pact of Iron and Spirit. Sitting among the ancient, moss-covered stones of the ruin, Kiran and Mira spent hours discussing the rapidly shifting dynamics of the Mist world and their respective survival strategies. Mira explained that while her spirit house allowed her to imbue weapons and armor with powerful elemental properties, she lacked the raw structural materials and heavy physical defenses needed to survive high-tier disasters. Kiran, possessing an infinite supply of refined resources and a literal bronze fortress, represented the perfect logistical partner to complement her magical crafting capabilities. They struck a formal, system-binding tactical alliance, a contract that prevented any form of mutual betrayal and ensured a fair distribution of resources and defensive support. Mira agreed to relocate her core survival operations to the reinforced perimeter of Kiran's bronze villa, integrating her spirit house into his automated defensive network. In return, Kiran promised to supply her with a continuous stream of refined iron ore, bronze plating, and exotic foods harvested by his beast forces. As they walked back toward the villa, Bhima and Nakula acting as a heavy vanguard, Kiran felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing his core faction was solidifying. With Arjun mapping the skies, the twin bears controlling the ground, and Mira enchanting their arsenal, their combined force was rapidly becoming an unstoppable entity. However, their newfound unity would soon be tested by a dark, predatory shadow creeping through the regional sector, driven by human malice. Chapter 13, The Vanguard Syndicate. The true horror of the Mist world was never going to be limited to the system's automated monsters. Human nature, when stripped of societal laws, was infinitely more malicious. On day 6, Mira's spirit house was successfully integrated into the northern courtyard of Kiran's bronze villa, its mystical chimneys venting glowing blue essence into the air. While refining a new batch of iron bolts, Kiran's survival bracelet intercepted a series of frantic, encrypted distress signals originating from a nearby valley. The global chat confirmed a terrifying rumor that had been circulating: the rise of a ruthless, heavily organized regional faction known as the Vanguard Syndicate. This syndicate was led by a cabal of beta-stage survivors who had abandoned all morality, choosing to hunt, kidnap, and enslave weaker solo players rather than forage for themselves. They targeted isolated cabins, forcefully stripping survivors of their survival wristbands to absorb their inventories before forcing them into brutal, manual resource farming labor camps. Kiran's radar interface suddenly chimed, displaying several red blips approaching his western territorial boundary. A scouting party from the Vanguard Syndicate, lured by the massive structural signature of the bronze villa. Kiran's eyes went cold as he stood on his high balcony, watching the distant tree line through a pair of advanced copper binoculars he had recently crafted. He signaled to Mira, who immediately began channeling lightning essence into the villa's automated ballista towers, turning the iron bolts into explosive projectiles. The Vanguard Syndicate thought they were approaching another weak, defenseless sheep to slaughter, but they were about to march directly into a meat grinder engineered by a god. Chapter 14, The Slaughter at the Western Wall. The Vanguard Syndicate scouting party, consisting of 12 heavily armed men riding mutated mist hounds, stepped confidently into the cleared perimeter surrounding Kiran's bronze villa. They stopped in their tracks, their jaws dropping in utter disbelief as they stared up at the towering bronze walls and the rotating, mechanized ballista turrets. Before their commander could issue an order to retreat or deploy defensive shields, Kiran coldly raised his hand, signaling the automated defense system to fire. A deafening, mechanized thrum echoed across the courtyard as four massive, lightning-imbued iron bolts tore through the air at supersonic speeds, leaving trails of blue ozone. The explosive projectiles impacted the center of the syndicate formation with catastrophic force, triggering a violent chain reaction of electrical energy that instantly vaporized half the scouts. The remaining men panicked, their mutated hounds shrieking as Bhima and Nakula charged out from the main gate like twin avalanches of bone and muscle. Bhima's massive claws crushed a rider instantly, while Nakula channeled her immense speed to intercept the fleeing scouts, tearing through their leather armor with terrifying ease. Arjun dived from the clouds, his razor-sharp talons tearing out the eyes of the syndicate commander, leaving him screaming in the blood-stained snow. Within less than 3 minutes, the entire hostile force had been completely annihilated, leaving behind a wealth of dropped weapons, armor pieces, and survival bracelets. Kiran walked out of the gate, his expression completely unbothered as he systematically harvested the dropped loot, knowing this minor skirmish was merely a declaration of total war. Chapter 15, The Wrath of Warlord Kaleth. While the human threat of the Vanguard Syndicate loomed to the west, an entirely different, ancient horror was mobilizing against the human survivors from the deep, uncharted eastern fog. On day 7, Arjun returned from a long-range reconnaissance flight over the eastern Pine Valleys, his cries frantic and filled with an unprecedented level of agitation. He transmitted a live visual feed to Kiran's survival bracelet UI, revealing a massive, terrifying military encampment nestled deep within a rocky canyon. This was the main stronghold of the Bista tribe, a native clan of violent, warmongering minotaur half-beasts who had inhabited this world long before the system arrived. The tribe was led by a legendary, giant warlord named Kaleth, a 3-meter-tall titan covered in thick, battle-scarred hide and wielding a massive, dual-bladed obsidian battle-axe. Kaleth viewed the sudden, chaotic arrival of billions of human survivors as an invasive pestilence that was corrupting his ancestral hunting grounds and stealing his resources. Through a magical shamanic ritual, Kaleth had managed to unite several scattered sub-tribes, mobilizing a massive, coordinated army of over 500 heavily armored Minotaur warriors. Their objective was simple and total: march through the sector and systematically eradicate every single human settlement, burning their fortresses to ash. Kirin zoomed in on the visual feed, noting that Kalitha's vanguard was already moving, their heavy, synchronized footsteps causing the very earth of the eastern valley to tremble. The bronze villa was sitting squarely along their primary invasion path, forcing Kirin to prepare for a catastrophic siege against an army of monsters. Chapter 16, the subterranean expedition. Realizing that his current defensive grid, while formidable, would eventually be overwhelmed by a synchronized attack from 500 giant Minotaur warriors, Kirin knew he needed an absolute trump card. He consulted the ancient cartography blueprints he had scavenged from the ruins, identifying a massive, hidden subterranean anomaly located directly beneath a recently collapsed lake bed to the south. Leaving Mira in total command of the villa's defensive systems and automated ballista fortresses, Kirin set out into the dark forest under the cover of a dense fog. He brought his entire beast vanguard Arjun patrolling above, with Bhima and Nakula acting as a heavy physical shield on either side of his path. Arriving at the edge of the collapsed lake bed, they found a yawning, pitch-black chasm that plunged deep into the tectonic strata of the mist world, venting ancient, warm air. Kirin tied a heavy-duty climbing rope to a reinforced stone pillar and rappelled down into the dark abyss, his twin Terra clawbears descending via a natural rocky ramp. At the bottom of the chasm lay a massive, awe-inspiring cavern system stretching for miles, its ceiling covered in glowing, bioluminescent crystals that bathed the ancient stone architecture in an eerie, sapphire light. This was not a natural geological formation, it was a sprawling, pristine ruined outpost belonging to a long-forgotten civilization that predated the current survival system. As Kirin stepped onto the paved stone highway of the cavern, his survival bracelet interface began to glitch violently, flashing warnings of immense, compressed magical energy nearby. Chapter 17, Navigating the Gauntlet of Wardens. The ancient highway led Kirin deeper into the subterranean dark, terminating at the entrance of a massive, vaulted temple carved directly into a single mountain of solid obsidian. As he crossed the threshold, the bioluminescent crystals on the walls flared to life, illuminating a series of complex, ancient murals depicting a cataclysmic war between cosmic entities. Suddenly, the stone floor groaned, and the temple's automated defensive mechanisms activated, sealing the heavy stone exit doors with a deafening metallic thud. From the shadows of the pillars, three massive mechanical guardians, constructed from ancient bronze and pulsing with deep blue magical energy, stepped forward, their glowing halberds leveled at Kirin. These were the ancient warden sentinels, left behind millennia ago to guard the inner sanctum against any unworthy intruders who managed to stumble into the depths. Kirin drew his reinforced iron sword, while Bhima and Nakula let out deafening, resonant roars, charging forward to intercept the mechanical titans before they could strike. A brutal, chaotic clash of metal and muscle echoed through the vaulted temple as Bhima's heavy bone armor deflected a sweeping strike from a bronze halberd. Nakula used her superior agility to flank the second sentinel, her titanium-like claws tearing through its internal clockwork gears and causing it to violently detonate in a shower of blue sparks. Arjun dived through the rafters, using his razor-sharp beak to puncture the glowing power cores embedded in the sentinels' heads, systematically blinding them. Kirin moved with fluid, practiced precision, exploiting the openings created by his beasts to drive his blade deep into the primary joints of the final guardian, deactivating it. Chapter 18, The Sword of the Sealed Empire. With the final warden sentinel deactivated and crumbling into brass fragments, the altar at the center of the obsidian temple split open, revealing a hidden chamber. Kirin walked up the stone steps, his heart pounding in his chest as a brilliant, mesmerizing blue radiance bathed his face, emanating from a deep pedestal. Resting silently on a cushion of crystallized stardust was a massive, beautifully crafted weapon that exuded an aura of absolute, primordial authority, the bronze demon-suppressing sword. The blade was forged from an unknown, high-density celestial alloy, its surface etched with intricate, swirling runes that seemed to actively breathe and pulse with latent cosmic energy. The hilt was wrapped in the leather of a long-extinct dragon species, its pommel shaped like a roaring lion with eyes made of burning sapphire stones. Kirin extended his right hand, his fingers slowly wrapping around the heavy hilt, and the moment his palm made direct contact, a massive shockwave of pure energy erupted. The violent kinetic blast rippled outward through the cavern system, shattering the surrounding stalactites and causing the entire subterranean mountain to tremble on its tectonic foundations. Brilliant streams of blue and crimson lightning surged up Kirin's arm, branding his skin with ancient, glowing runic tattoos that permanently bonded him to the weapon. His survival bracelet interface glitched completely out of existence for several terrifying seconds before rebooting into an ancient, blood-red font that displayed information rewriting his entire understanding of this world. Chapter 19, The Cosmic Revelation. The blood-red text formatting across Kiran's interface did not display standard system stats. Instead, it began downloading an ancient historical archive directly into his subconscious mind. He gasped as a torrent of ancestral memories flooded his brain, revealing the true, dark nature of the gamified mist world they had been dropped into. This world was never a random survival arena constructed by a benevolent deity or an advanced alien race for the simple amusement or testing of humanity. It was a massive, prehistoric cosmic prison planet, engineered eons ago by an alliance of supreme beings known as the Primal Wardens to contain an unspeakable evil. Deep beneath the crust of the planet lay the endless abyss, a shifting labyrinth holding the shattered, bound remnants of primordial demons and dark gods who had once tried to consume the universe. The system that governed their survival bracelets was actually an automated cosmic containment protocol that was slowly failing, its energy grids deteriorating after millions of years of continuous operation. The system was forcibly summoning billions of intelligent souls from across the multiverse, using them as organic fuel filters to cleanse the spreading demonic corruption and reinforce the prison walls. By claiming the bronze demon-suppressing sword, Kiran had unknowingly accepted the legendary mantle of the Warden General, inheriting the ultimate key to controlling the prison's latent defense systems. Chapter 20, The Awakening of the Blade. Kiran opened his eyes, which now glowed with a faint, residual sapphire light, and looked down at the magnificent celestial blade resting securely in his hand. The interface on his wrist updated, displaying the weapon's legendary properties. It was a deep blue-grade mythical relic, possessing a permanent 500% damage modifier against all demonic, corrupted, and non-human native entities. Furthermore, the sword granted Kiran direct telepathic command over all subterranean defense networks and regional containment seals within a 50-kilometer radius of his current position. He swung the massive blade through the air, and the sheer weight of the weapon created a localized vacuum, generating a sharp, whistling gust of wind that cut a clean line through the temple's stone pillars. Arjun let out a piercing, triumphal shriek from above, sensing the immense upgrade in his master's spiritual power, while Bhima and Nakula nuzzled Kiran's hands, their loyalty deepening into profound reverence. Kiran sheathed the glowing sword on his back, feeling the raw cosmic energy pulsing against his spine, ready to be unleashed at a moment's notice. He looked up toward the surface world, knowing that while he was uncovering cosmic secrets, the physical armies of the surface were marching toward his home. It was time to return to the Bronze Villa and show both the Vanguard Syndicate and Kalitha's Minotaur Horde what happens when they provoke the Warden of the Abyss. Chapter 21, The Siege of the Two Armies. When Kiran finally emerged from the subterranean chasm and returned to the surface on Day 8, the regional sector had degenerated into an absolute apocalyptic war zone. From the west, a massive armada of armored combat vehicles and over 200 Syndicate soldiers from the Vanguard Syndicate had completely surrounded the outer perimeter of his villa. From the east, a terrifying wall of muscle and obsidian iron had arrived, Warlord Kalitha's army of 500 giant Minotaur warriors, their war horns blowing a deafening chorus that echoed through the valleys. The two hostile forces, arriving at the target coordinates simultaneously, had locked eyes and instantly engaged in a chaotic, three-way meat grinder with Kiran's defenses. Mira stood bravely on the central balcony of the Bronze Villa, her eyes glowing with pure electrical energy as she continuously channeled lightning into the automated ballista network. The turrets hummed at maximum capacity, firing explosive, enchanted iron bolts into the swirling mass of Syndicate soldiers and roaring Minotaur giants below. However, the sheer numerical superiority of the two armies was beginning to take its toll. The villa's outer defensive trenches were being filled with corpses, and the northern wall was beginning to fracture under the repeated impacts of the Minotaur's massive siege rams. Kiran stood at the edge of the tree-line, taking in the grand scale of the devastation, his hands slowly reaching behind his back to grip the hilt of his newly acquired mythic relic. Chapter 22, The Dance of Lightning and Steel. With a violent, metallic ring that seemed to cut cleanly through the deafening noise of the battlefield, Kiran unsheathed the bronze demon-suppressing sword. He didn't slip into the shadows or attempt a stealthy entry. Instead, he leaped directly onto the battlefield, a brilliant aura of sapphire cosmic energy erupting from his body and carving a wide, glowing path through the dense fog. Arjun swept down from the upper atmosphere like a localized hurricane, his wings generating razor-sharp gale-force winds that disoriented the frontline Syndicate soldiers, while Bhima and Nakula slammed into their flanks like twin runaway freight trains. Kiran moved with terrifying, superhuman speed, his blade transformed into a blur of blue fire that cleanly sheared through the reinforced steel armor of the Syndicate vehicles as if it were soft wax. Every single swing of the celestial sword released a crescent wave of concussive cosmic force that vaporized groups of enemies instantly, leaving the battlefield painted in glowing blue embers. Mira, spotting Kiran's dramatic arrival from the balcony, let out a cheer and unleashed the ultimate technique of her spirit house, summoning a massive, roaring thunderstorm directly above the courtyard. Sheets of blinding, elemental lightning rained down from the sky, perfectly guided by Kiran's sapphire aura to strike only the hostile Syndicate forces and the roaring Minotaur warriors. The battlefield transformed into a beautifully coordinated dance of lethal lightning and celestial steel, with Kiran acting as the undisputed conductor of absolute destruction. Chapter 23, clashing with the Titan warlord amidst the swirling vortex of blood, shattered metal, and electrical discharges, a thunderous, earth-shaking roar echoed from the eastern gate as the crowd of Minotaur warriors parted. Warlord Kaleth himself marched forward, his massive 3-meter frame covered in smoking, lightning-scarred bone armor, his glowing crimson eyes locked entirely onto Kiran with absolute, primal hatred. He swung his massive, two-bladed obsidian battle-axe through the air with terrifying velocity, effortlessly cleaving a stray Syndicate armored vehicle clean in half to clear his path toward the warden. Human pestilence! Kaleth bellowed, his voice carrying a powerful sonic frequency that caused the surrounding survivors' ears to bleed. You dare defile the sacred lands of the Bista? Today, your hollow bronze palace becomes your burial mound. He leaped into the air with impossible agility for his massive size, bringing the giant obsidian axe down toward Kiran's head with a force that threatened to split the bedrock of the valley. Kiran didn't dodge, he planted his feet firmly into the blood-stained earth, raised the bronze demon-suppressing sword with both hands, and met the descending Titan's strike head-on. A cataclysmic explosion of pure kinetic and cosmic energy erupted at the point of contact, generating a massive shockwave that violently blew away every single soldier, beast, and vehicle within a 50-meter radius. The ground beneath Kiran's boots shattered into a deep crater, but his bronze-clad arms remained completely locked, his celestial blade easily holding back the crushing weight of the giant warlord's axe. Chapter 24, the fall of the Minotaur King. Kaleth's expression of arrogant fury instantly morphed into absolute, wide-eyed shock as he realized that his ultimate, full-power strike had been effortlessly stopped by a single human. Before the giant Minotaur could recover his balance or withdraw his massive obsidian axe, Kiran channeled his spiritual energy through his runic tattoos, activating the sword's unique command ability. The swirling runes along the celestial blade flared with a brilliant, blinding sapphire radiance, unleashing a localized burst of gravity magic that instantly pinned Kaleth's massive frame to the earth. This world is a prison, Kaleth, Kiran said, his voice echoing with the ancient, layered authority of the Warden General. And you are nothing but a disruptive inmate. With a fluid, blindingly fast upward slash, the bronze demon-suppressing sword cleanly severed the handle of Kaleth's obsidian axe, sending the massive blade spinning uselessly into the snow. Kiran followed through with a seamless pivot, driving the glowing celestial blade straight through the center of Kaleth's heavy bone breastplate, piercing his primary heart. The giant warlord gasped, the crimson light in his eyes slowly fading as the sword's demonic suppression properties dissolved his internal life force from the inside out. He collapsed heavily to his knees, his massive body trembling before toppling forward into the dirt, dead before his head hit the frozen ground. Seeing their legendary king fall so effortlessly, the remaining Minotaur warriors let out terrified shrieks, threw down their weapons, and scattered into the eastern fog in a total, disorganized retreat. Chapter 25, the extermination of the Syndicate. With the native Minotaur army completely routed and fleeing for their lives, the remaining forces of the Vanguard Syndicate found themselves entirely isolated and trapped within the villa's lethal perimeter. The Syndicate commanders frantically attempted to order a full retreat, but Mira coldly activated the villa's primary defensive barrier, raising a massive wall of solid bronze spikes from the ground to completely block their escape routes. Kiran turned his attention toward the remaining invaders, his celestial blade dripping with glowing blue essence, his expression devoid of any mercy for those who chose to prey on the weak. He signaled to Bhima and Nakula, who hunted down the fleeing Syndicate lieutenants with ruthless efficiency, while Arjun maintained absolute air superiority, striking down any vehicles that attempted to break through the perimeter. Kiran walked through the chaotic lines of the enemy like an absolute god of death, every sweep of his sword ending another syndicate life and automatically absorbing their survival bracelets into his fortress inventory database. Within less than 10 minutes of Kalitha's demise, the entire invasion force of the Vanguard Syndicate had been completely wiped out, leaving behind a silent, snow-covered clearing littered with millions of units of high-tier materials. Mira deactivated the thunderstorm, descending from the balcony to stand beside Kirin, her breathing heavy but her eyes burning with a deep, profound admiration for what they had just accomplished. They had not only survived a two-front apocalyptic siege, they had completely eradicated the two greatest military threats in the entire regional sector in a single afternoon. Chapter 26, The Spoils of Total Victory. The conclusion of the Great Battle brought an unprecedented influx of wealth and resources to the Bronze Villa, as the system interface systematically processed the dropped loot from nearly 700 elite combatants. Kirin sat at the grand stone table in the central hall of his villa, reviewing the massive, scrolling inventory report displayed by his survival bracelet UI. They had acquired over 50,000 units of refined iron blocks, 10,000 units of rare obsidian shards, 30 automated weapon blueprints, and 5 million ancient spirit coins. Furthermore, by eliminating the commander of the Vanguard Syndicate, Kirin had automatically absorbed the faction's regional territory rights, expanding his automated radar and construction grid by an additional 20 kilometers. Without hesitation, he began channeling this massive mountain of resources into his infinite upgrade system, initiating a massive, compound evolution of their entire faction infrastructure. The Bronze Villa underwent a breathtaking transformation, its walls expanding into a massive, multi-layered obsidian fortress reinforced with celestial bronze plating and protected by an active magical energy shield. Mira's spirit house evolved into a soaring, 5-story arcane academy, its core connected directly to the villa's power grid to automatically enchant every single ballista bolt and defensive cannon with high-tier elemental properties. Dima and Nakula were provided with customized, obsidian-plated battle armor crafted by the system, increasing their defensive capabilities to a level where ordinary physical attacks could no longer harm them. Chapter 27, The Mystery of the Gold Broadcast Card. Among the massive pile of elite loot recovered from the Vanguard Syndicate's commander was a highly unusual, pristine item that pulsed with a vibrant, hyper-concentrated gold light, a global gold broadcast card. The system interface described it as a legendary, one-time use artifact capable of transmitting a localized video or audio broadcast directly to every single survival bracelet across the entire Mist world, bypassing all regional signal blocks. Mira looked over Kirin's shoulder at the glowing card, her brow furrowing in deep thought as she realized the immense psychological and political power the item represented in a fragmented world. Most factions would use this to spread fear or demand tribute, she noted quietly, her finger tracing the intricate digital circuitry etched onto the card's surface. But if we use it strategically, we can reshape the entire global economy of the survivors before the next world disaster hits us. Kirin nodded slowly, his mind immediately developing a plan that combined his knowledge of the world's hidden prison mechanics with their current absolute economic dominance. He knew that the system's automated shop node was scheduled to refresh in exactly 48 hours, an event that would draw the frantic attention of every living survivor looking for a lifeline. If they launched a viral, global broadcast right before the shop refresh, they could position their fortress as the undisputed hub for survival resources, completely controlling the flow of high-tier materials worldwide. Chapter 28, Preparing the viral campaign. For the next 2 days, Kirin and Mira worked tirelessly to prepare the logistics for their upcoming global broadcast, transforming their obsidian fortress into a highly efficient production factory. Using their massive surplus of wood, iron, and the exotic rubber seeds they had recently acquired through trade, they began mass-producing high-value survival kits. The system interface described it as a legendary, one-time use artifact capable of transmitting a localized video or audio broadcast directly to every single survival bracelet across the entire Mist world, bypassing all regional signal blocks. Mira looked over Kirin's shoulder at the glowing card, her brow furrowing in deep thought as she realized the immense psychological and political power the item represented in a fragmented world. Most factions would use this to spread fear or demand tribute, she noted quietly, her finger tracing the intricate digital circuitry etched onto the card's surface. But if we use it strategically, we can reshape the entire global economy of the survivors before the next world disaster hits us. Kirin nodded slowly, his mind immediately developing a plan that combined his knowledge of the world's hidden prison mechanics with their current absolute economic dominance. He knew that the system's automated shop node was scheduled to refresh in exactly 48 hours, an event that would draw the frantic attention of every living survivor looking for a lifeline. If they launched a viral, global broadcast right before the shop refresh, they could position their fortress as the undisputed hub for survival resources, completely controlling the flow of high-tier materials worldwide. Chapter 28, Preparing the Viral Campaign. For the next 2 days, Kiran and Mira worked tirelessly to prepare the logistics for their upcoming global broadcast, transforming their obsidian fortress into a highly efficient production factory. Using their massive surplus of wood, iron, and the exotic rubber seeds they had recently acquired through trade, they began mass-producing high-value survival kits. These kits contained insulated winter clothing, long-burning elemental torches, distilled holy spring healing water, and high-efficiency iron tools designed to drastically increase a survivor's gathering speed. Kiran utilized his unique Warden interface to imprint a minor, passive tracking and defensive rune onto each item, ensuring that any survivor who purchased their gear would be subtly integrated into their network. Mira spent her hours in the Arcane Academy, mass-enchanting the items with low-tier warmth and protection spells, ensuring their products would perform flawlessly in any environmental conditions. Arjun flew continuous security patrols around the expanded 20-kilometer perimeter, ensuring that no stray scouts or rival factions could disrupt their massive logistical operations. The atmosphere within the fortress was electric with anticipation. They were no longer just defending their own lives, they were preparing to step onto the global stage as the undisputed merchant kings of the apocalypse. Kiran held the gold broadcast card in his hand, watching the countdown timer on his survival bracelet approach the exact moment of the global shop refresh. Chapter 29, Broadcasting to a Dying World. The exact moment the countdown reached 0, Kiran activated the global gold broadcast card, and a brilliant pillar of gold light erupted from the central tower of the obsidian fortress, piercing the upper atmosphere. Across the entire mist world, billions of survivors suddenly gasped as their survival bracelets chimed violently, their digital screens overriding to project a crystal-clear, live video feed of Kiran's face. The global chat interface fell into an absolute, dead silence as humanity stared in awe at the clean, well-lit, and perfectly warm interior of the fortress hall. Kiran stood before the broadcast interface, his expression calm, confident, and radiating an aura of absolute stability that stood in stark contrast to the absolute misery of the viewer base. Survivors of the mist world, Kiran began, his voice echoing clearly inside the heads of billions of desperate people across the planet. The system tells you that this is a game, but you already know the truth. It is a meat grinder designed to consume your souls. While your self-proclaimed leaders and syndicates offer you nothing but slavery and fear, the Obsidian faction offers you a real choice, a choice of trade, survival, and absolute strength. He gestured behind him, revealing rows upon rows of pristine survival kits, glowing elemental weapons, and barrels of pure, sparkling holy spring healing water. Chapter 30, The Birth of Global Commerce. Kiran laid out the terms of their global commerce network, launching a customized, automated storefront extension directly onto every survivor's bracelet interface through the card's hijack signal. He offered their high-tier survival kits and elemental tools at incredibly fair, standardized rates, accepting only raw iron block or sulfur, ancient spirit coins, and rare blueprint scrolls as payment. The reaction from the global survivor population was an instantaneous, unprecedented tidal wave of absolute economic frenzy that nearly crashed the system's primary data transmission grid. Millions of desperate individuals, solo players, and small regional factions who had been hoarding useless raw materials immediately flooded the storefront with purchase orders. Within less than an hour, over 500,000 survival kits were sold, and a continuous, blinding stream of raw resources began materializing directly into the fortress's massive underground storage vaults. The economic power structure of the entire mist world was completely rewritten in a single afternoon. Kiran had successfully transformed his local stronghold into the undisputed financial capital of the apocalypse. Resources were flooding in from every corner of the planet, providing his infinite upgrade system with an absolutely limitless pool of structural fuel. Mira watched the digital resource counters climb into the tens of millions, her face lit by the glowing UI, laughing in sheer disbelief at the absolute scale of their total economic victory. Chapter 31, The Shadow of the Abyss deepens. However, their massive global success did not come without triggering a terrifying, cosmic reaction from the hidden, sentient forces that governed the depths of the prison planet. On day 12, while reviewing the newly expanded storage vaults, Kiran felt a sudden, ice-cold chill cut through his spine, a sensation completely unrelated to the physical temperature of the room. The bronze demon suppressing sword mounted on his back began to vibrate violently, its sapphire runes flashing a frantic, deep crimson warning pattern that illuminated the dark stone walls. Simultaneously, the system interface on his wrist updated, displaying a terrifying world announcement that was pushed out to every living survivor with an ominous, glitching red border. System warning: global containment integrity has degraded below 40%. The first localized abyssal fracture will manifest in 72 hours. Prepare for the arrival of the non-living entities. Kiran walked up to the highest balcony of the central tower, looking out past their expanded territorial boundaries toward the deep, uncharted valleys of the south. In the far distance, a massive, swirling vortex of pitch-black, necrotic energy was slowly tearing open the sky, bleeding purple lightning into the fog. The automated cosmic prison containment grids were failing at an accelerated rate due to the massive economic shifts, and the primordial horrors locked in the depths were about to break through the crust. Chapter 32: The Gathering of the Regional Lords. The terrifying announcement of the oncoming abyssal fracture forced the remaining independent factions and regional lords of their sector to make a definitive choice: unite under Kiran's banner or face absolute annihilation. On day 13, Kiran's radar interface detected a large, synchronized group of survivors approaching the outer perimeter of the obsidian fortress under a formal flag of truce. This assembly was led by several prominent regional lords, including Zhang, the leader of a nomadic scouting faction, and Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant medical specialist who had organized a network of healers. They had witnessed the absolute devastation Kiran had unleashed upon the Vanguard Syndicate and recognized that his fortress was the only structure capable of surviving a demonic invasion. Kiran received them in the grand audience hall, his celestial sword glowing faintly on his back, with Bhima and Nakula flanking his obsidian throne like silent monuments of absolute lethality. Zhang stepped forward, bowing his head respectfully as he laid his faction's primary command token onto the stone floor before Kiran's feet. "We don't want to be slaves to a syndicate, and we don't want to be eaten by monsters," Zhang said, his voice echoing with absolute sincerity. "We have seen your power, Warden. We offer you our absolute loyalty, our resources, and our blades if you promise to protect our people from the shadow." Chapter 33: The Grand Coalition of the Mist. Kiran accepted their loyalty tokens, officially integrating their scattered factions into a single, cohesive military organization known as the Grand Coalition of the Mist. Under his direct guidance and utilizing his infinite system, the surrounding 20 kilometers of territory were systematically transformed into a unified, heavily fortified defensive network. The survivors were organized into highly efficient construction, foraging, and military units, with Mira establishing a localized branch of her arcane academy to train new elemental mages. Zhang was placed in total command of the coalition's scouting vanguards, utilizing Arjun's aerial mapping data to set up a series of advanced warning outposts around the perimeter. Dr. Sarah Chen took charge of the fortress's medical wings, utilizing a continuous supply of pure holy spring water to mass-produce powerful healing potions and anti-corruption salves. Kiran channeled millions of units of their globally traded iron and stone into constructing a massive, 10-meter-deep moat of celestial bronze surrounding the entire fortress wall. The moat was filled with liquid elemental fire engineered by Mira, creating a permanent, burning barrier that would vaporize any low-tier demonic entities that attempted to breach their walls. The Obsidian Fortress was no longer just a solitary sanctuary for two people, it had transformed into the booming, heavily militarized capital city of a rising human empire, ready for war. Chapter 34: The Gathering Storm of the Dead. The final 24 hours before the manifestation of the abyssal fracture were defined by a suffocating, unnatural silence that settled over the entire regional sector. The standard mist seemed to withdraw completely, replaced by a dense, foul-smelling black fog that rolled out from the southern vortex, killing all vegetation it touched. From his position on the central command wall, Kiran watched through his advanced copper binoculars as the swirling vortex in the southern sky finally stabilized into a yawning cosmic tear. The ambient light of the world faded into a permanent, sickly twilight as thousands of long-dead, mutated skeletons and demonic phantoms began pouring out of the rift. These were the abyssal husks, ancient prisoners of the planet who had been corrupted by demonic energy, their eyes burning with a hollow purple flame, their claws capable of rendering armor useless. They marched in a silent, terrifyingly synchronized mass of hundreds of thousands, a literal ocean of death that stretched across the southern valleys as far as the eye could see. Kiran's survival bracelet interface chimed continuously, displaying a massive global quest window, world event, defend the containment sector against the abyssal horde, survival duration, 24 hours. Kirin turned to face his gathered army of mages, soldiers, and beasts, his face a mask of absolute, unyielding resolve as he drew his glowing sword. Chapter 35, The Battle of the Burning Moat. The abyssal horde slammed into the outer defensive perimeter of the obsidian fortress with a sound like a collapsing mountain, a chaotic wave of claws, bone, and screaming phantoms. The automated ballista fortresses and heavy defensive cannons opened fire simultaneously, unleashing a continuous, deafening barrage of lightning-enchanted iron bolts and explosive fire shells into the mass. Every single explosion tore massive gaps in the enemy lines, vaporizing thousands of husks instantly, but the sheer, endless numbers of the horde simply stepped over the ashes, pressing forward. When the frontline entities reached the edge of the central defensive walls, they tumbled by the thousands into the massive moat of celestial bronze. Mira coldly activated the ignition runes, and the liquid elemental fire erupted into a towering, 30-meter-tall wall of white-hot flame that lit up the twilight sky. The intense, supernatural heat instantly incinerated any demonic creature that touched it, creating a literal barrier of burning ash that severely choked the horde's forward momentum. Arjun soared high above the inferno, utilizing his unique acoustic cries to disrupt the psychic hive-mind synchronization of the demonic phantoms, causing them to violently attack each other. Bhima and Nakula stood firmly at the main obsidian gate, their armored paws swinging like crushing maces, systematically smashing any giant abyssal fiends that managed to leap across the burning moat. Chapter 36, The Breach at the Eastern Bastion. Despite the magnificent, historic performance of the fortress's primary defensive grid, the sheer, relentless weight of hundreds of thousands of demonic entities eventually caused a critical structural failure. Around midnight, a massive, high-tier entity known as an abyssal behemoth, a towering monster made of fused skeletal matter and rotting flesh, slammed its massive fist into the eastern gate. The reinforced obsidian structure groaned under the immense kinetic and necrotic impact, and a wide, fracturing breach ripped open along the lower foundation wall. Dozens of fast, venomous abyssal crawlers immediately began pouring through the structural gap, bypassing the burning moat and invading the inner courtyard of the fortress. Panic began to ripple through the frontline survivor units as several soldiers were dragged down into the darkness, their armor corroding under the crawler's acid spit. Hearing the frantic distress calls over the coalition communication network, Kirin vanished from his central command post, utilizing his warden speed to sprint across the battlements. He dropped from the high balcony like a descending star, the bronze demon suppressing sword held high as he channeled his entire reservoir of cosmic energy into the blade. He impacted the center of the breached courtyard with a deafening boom, unleashing a massive, concentric shockwave of sapphire fire that instantly vaporized every single invading crawler within 30 meters. Chapter 37, Confronting the Demon. General Kirin stood firmly in the center of the fractured eastern courtyard, his celestial blade radiating an intense, blinding white light that completely drove back the surrounding necrotic black fog. From the shadows of the breach outside the wall, a terrifying figure slowly stepped forward, its footsteps leaving trails of black frost on the stone floor. This was the commander of the invasion horde, an elite, high-tier entity known as Malachar, the Abyssal General, a towering demonic knight clad in living, writhing soul armor. He wielded a massive, jagged greatsword that bled dark purple necrotic lightning, and his face was a featureless mask of void energy dominated by a single, burning crimson eye. "So, a new mortal dog attempts to wear the mantle of the warden," Malachar hissed, his voice sounding like the grinding of tectonic plates deep beneath the earth. "Your automated toys cannot save you, human. The containment walls are falling, and the abyss will reclaim this world." He lunged forward with terrifying, reality-bending speed, his necrotic greatsword flashing through the air in a lethal arc designed to cleanly sever Kirin's head from his shoulders. Kirin didn't retreat a single inch. He activated his runic tattoos, raised the bronze demon suppressing sword, and engaged the demonic general in a brutal, high-speed duel of cosmic power. Chapter 38, The Duel of Cosmic Elements. The clash between the Warden General and the Abyssal General transformed the eastern courtyard into a catastrophic vortex of exploding sapphire fire and dark purple necrotic lightning. Every single impact of their massive blades generated a localized shockwave that shattered the surrounding stone pillars and sent cracks running up the fortress walls. Malachar moved with ancient, practiced brutality, his jagged greatsword unleashing continuous waves of corrosive void energy that attempted to dissolve Kirin's physical life force. Kirin, however, possessed the ultimate damage advantage. His celestial mythic relic pulsed with a permanent 500% damage modifier against all demonic entities. He expertly parried a downward strike from the demon general, pivoted smoothly on his healed left leg, and delivered a blindingly fast counter-slash across Malakar's chest. The celestial alloy of the sword tore through the living soul armor like paper, unleashing a burst of pure cosmic suppression magic that caused the demon general to roar in agonizing pain. Mira, spotting the critical duel from the high tower, channeled her entire remaining mana pool to cast a massive gravity trap spell directly beneath Malakar's feet. Heavy, glowing emerald bands of magical force erupted from the cobblestones, instantly locking the demon general's limbs in place and stalling his movements for a vital second. Chapter 39, the sealing of Malakar. Exploiting the vital opening created by Mira's spell, Kirin channeled every single drop of his remaining spiritual energy through his runic tattoos directly into the hilt of his sword. The swirling runes along the bronze demon-suppressing sword flared with a brilliant, blinding light that completely illuminated the entire battle sector, shifting from sapphire blue to an absolute, pure white. "Your sentence was passed eons ago, Malakar," Kirin roared, his voice carrying the layered, terrifying resonance of the ancient prison masters. "And as the Warden General, I am here to execute it." With a single, fluid, and monumentally powerful downward strike, Kirin drove the glowing celestial blade straight through Malakar's featureless void mask, piercing his central core. A deafening, cosmic shriek of absolute agony erupted from the demon general's maw as the sword's unique suppression properties violently dissolved his dark essence from the inside out. Streams of blinding white light burst from his chest and eyes, tearing his living soul armor to pieces before he violently exploded in a massive shockwave of harmless white dust. Seeing their legendary general so utterly erased from existence, the remaining hundreds of thousands of husks outside the walls let out a collective, terrified wail, their purple eyes extinguishing as they collapsed into lifeless piles of bone. Chapter 40, the Rise of the Warden Empire. The dawn of Day 15 broke across the mist world, bringing with it a pristine, beautiful sky completely devoid of the suffocating dark fog for the first time since their arrival. The massive southern vortex had completely collapsed into a silent scar, its necrotic energy thoroughly sealed away once more by the restoration of the local regional grids. Kirin stood proudly on the highest balcony of the central tower of the obsidian fortress, looking out over a massive, booming city that was safe, warm, and secure. Below him, thousands of survivors from the Grand Coalition were actively working to rebuild the Eastern Bastion, their faces no longer showing panic or despair, but a deep, profound sense of absolute hope. They had not only survived the catastrophic abyssal fracture, they had completely proven to the entire world that humanity could fight back and win against the darkness. Kirin sheathed the bronze demon-suppressing sword on his back, the beautiful weapon humming quietly against his spine, its runes pulsing with a calm, stable sapphire light. He looked beside him at Mira, who smiled warmly, her hand gently resting on his shoulder as Arjun circled majestically in the bright blue sky above their heads. They had successfully built an unyielding foundation in the heart of the apocalypse, transforming a simple, drafty log cabin into the capital city of a rising, immortal empire that would eventually conquer the entire mist world.
If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and share your thoughts in the comments below.